The purpose of this show is to guide you to realign with habits that get you to live the life you've always dreamed of. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with Jesse Ewing. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle, where you can access your full potential right now. Finally break free from destructive habits. That dream life, if you want it, you can have it. This is where you transform your health, mind, business, and relationships, or do nothing and keep your life the way it is. But if you're ready for change, you're in the right place. This is where you're gonna learn how to live a habit-based lifestyle. You are tuning in to the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Jesse Ewing. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle. Let's go.
If you're like me, you put in lots of hours, long days during the week. You're doing lots of work, but what about your family? You see, I often catch myself on Saturdays and Sundays getting distracted. I get lost in my phone. I get lost in thinking about business or other things. But this last week, I attended a biohacking event in LA, and I had an opportunity to be there for 4 days, and I was inspired. One of the breakouts that we did, we broke out into groups, and it really made me realize as we were going through this experience that I'm not very present with my wife and my kids. As much as I want to say and I want to preach on here, hey, be present, and all these things, the reality of it is I began to feel like I wasn't. And so I found myself in this experience with other people where we would actually be sitting down face to face across from each other, and we would actually look people in the eyes. This wasn't just this one, but it had happened several times. You know, it wasn't for, like 10 seconds. It was for like 2 minutes. And as you look someone in the eye for 2 minutes, what ends up happening is you look past everything on the exterior that you see. So maybe like their hair, their skin, their clothes, all the surface level stuff that we normally see and judge people with as they walk by. You see, this went on for about 20 minutes, from men to women, and I'll be honest with you, like I was very uncomfortable at first. I was kind of like, all right, this is like some woo-woo, like weird stuff. And I even like tried to make an excuse like, oh, I'm going to go check out something out in the other room. But I ended up staying in the room, and I found myself immersed in this experience. And one of the things that came up for me was this. It was very intriguing, but I'm sitting there staring across from someone, and I'm like, man, why don't I do this with my kids? Why don't I do this with my wife? And after several times of doing this, I started to wonder what might change inside of my marriage, my relationship, and my connection if I did this. And maybe you're listening to this being like, man, I don't do that either. I don't look at my kids in the eye. I don't look my wife or my husband in the eye. I don't look my spouse or my family in the eye. And it's one thing to look someone in the eye for 5 seconds or a couple seconds, but to actually look at them in the eye for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, you begin to look past every story, everything that you've ever known about them. And so as I sat there looking at this other person, I began to ask myself this powerful question. When is the last time I looked my kids or my wife in their eyes deep into their soul and really just sat there and stared at them? You see, as a kid growing up, I'm not sure I ever looked my parents in the eye like this. And I'm not sure they ever looked me in the eye like this, and I don't blame them for any of that. Listen, they did the best that they could with the tools that they were given. But this observation led me to when is the last time I looked my wife in the eye like this? And although we go on weekly date nights and we do these things, although I could say I've done it more with her, I could also say that I don't do it frequently enough. And the facts are, I don't do this consistently at all with my wife or my kids. My kids, not at all. My wife, yes, but not many times. I don't look my kids in their eyes and past their exterior and into their soul. And if you think about this, as sweet as they are, this is where a lot of the triggers, a lot of the things that we react to as parents go away. And I began to think about my relationship and how different they could be with all of my kids, even the ones that seem to drive me the craziest. Like, we always have one child or one kid that, for whatever reason, we can react to the most. But then I thought about, man, what if I just seen them at the level of their soul instead of seeing them for the things that trigger me? Because just doing it with strangers is powerful. But my own kids and my own family, my own flesh and blood is completely different. And some feelings that kind of came up for me, and I'm feeling them right now, even in this situation as I talk about it, I started to feel this guilt and shame. I started to feel distant and uncertain, lack as a father, husband, leader. And it started to make me feel uncomfortable. And it started to expose me. And I felt frustrated. And to be honest with you, I felt a little embarrassed, disconnected. And I started to think like, man, these are my kids, my wife, the ones that I lead, that I'm a role model for, and I'm not even showing up for them in this way. Do they know any different? No, but now I do. And so I really started to think about, well, what's in the way of you really showing up and doing this? And some stories and excuses that came up right away were like, hey, I connect to them in other ways. Maybe I'm embarrassed by what they might think. Maybe they might think it's weird. Some other ways is like, hey, I show my kids by doing daily deposits and all these other things every day. Why do I got to do it this way? Some other stories are like, hey, my parents never did this to me and I ended up fine. But then I came to this next thing. Is this working for me or not working? Now that I know that there's a different path, what I started to discover is this: not working for me is not connecting with my kids on this level. Not working for me is me not being comfortable doing this. The other thing that's not working is me doing this with strangers, not my family. And I've had, in the last year to 15 months, I've had probably 4 or 5 opportunities where I've done this, and it just hit me now. You see, what is working though is this: me understanding that I can begin to use this as an opportunity to connect with my kids, my wife, to look deep into their souls and look past whatever triggers, whatever stories, whatever frustrations I may have. It's an opportunity for me to slow down and do this. It's an opportunity for me to begin teaching my kids something different, a different way to connect. And sure, it may be uncomfortable, but how powerful is it to teach this to my wife and my kids, to get past the surface and to begin to connect at a deeper level? Church will not give you this. Church will not give my family this. And I can't think of a more spiritual way to connect with my family every single day. And maybe we don't do it every single day, but we do it once a week. You see, I'm so passionate about this that I'm beginning to make an actual course that's going to be called the Family Map. And it's going to have a step-by-step process. If you're going to be in my 12-week program, you will have complete access to this. But I'm going to give you some of the framework today, and then there's going to be another episode coming that's going to be part 2 on how to actually begin to do this in your family's life. But I want to leave you with this one thing today, and just ask you this simple question: when is the last time you looked your spouse, your wife, your husband, your kids, your parents in the eyes, and you just sat across from them for 2 to 3 minutes and said nothing? And said nothing. And part 2 of this, what would it feel like for you to take some time? Maybe it's today. Maybe it's this weekend, and just connect with your wife and your kids. Maybe it's your parents or your family. What would it feel like for you to take this time and do this? And as you answer this, think about one way you can begin to affect your relationship with your spouse, your kids, your family, and begin doing this. And I'm going to be back next episode breaking down how you will begin doing this. And I'm going to be starting to do this on a week-to-week basis, not every single day, but just a week-to-week basis. And I'm going to teach you how to do this also. If you're looking to connect further with a group of like-minded people, join myself and so many others in my Habit-Based Lifestyle Secrets group on Facebook, where I'll be dropping daily habits, tips, and tricks to help you begin living to your potential. If you want to be one of our next case studies and begin living this habit-based lifestyle, you can check out my website, jesseewell.com. You can also check out my other website, habitbasedlifestyle.com. If you have any questions, comments, requests, feel free to reach out to me, jesse@habitbasedlifestyle.com. Leave me a review. I would love to hear from you. Until next episode, have a great day.
The purpose of this show is to guide you to realign with habits that get you to live the life you've always dreamed of. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with Jesse.